Cosmic here. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to do a little bit of a look back in 2024 for all the TCGs we've covered, and then also get a quick look at 2025 of the already confirmed games or games that are pretty much confirmed and we can expect to get confirmed in the near future based on rumors or other things. So I really wanted to try to get this video out before the new year. Obviously, at the time this can go live, it'll already be new year in some parts of the world, but again, I apologize for lack of videos. I've been sick. Today's the first day that I actually feel like a person, sort of. And I am working Orlando for those that might have missed it. So I guess just as a personal note before I get into the actual TCGs themselves and kind of my thoughts on where they are today, it's just been a really great year. So obviously I've been doing a lot on the Bandai side just from a casting perspective. They still invite me back somehow. So I'm very grateful for that. But it's just been really cool to see Bandai as a company kind of level up, especially for those that have been following this channel for 10 years, going all the way back to my Force of Will days when I was the head judge of North America. I helped plan events, and I know how difficult it can be to actually get good venue size. And for my connections that I still have, or just through hearing from other people, I'm very aware of the current challenges that a lot of organizers face for getting together new venues post-COVID, because prices have been insane and a lot of other factors. So huge shout out to Illustrals on that, which we'll talk about as one of the games later on. They're actually going to have their first big in-person event, which is really cool to see. But again, I really want to stress that I am no stranger to the difficulties that a lot of TOs are facing in this new environment. And then also because there's just an ever-growing amount of trading card games, it continues to be challenging. So again, I think just from an overall, looking back on the year from a personal standpoint, it's been really cool again to see Bandai level up. We got to go to the Gundam World Premiere in North America, which was just absolutely insane for a new trading card game and kind of everything that they've done. So just from a organizational standpoint, I realize it's impossible to not sound biased because of the games I am currently covering. If people don't know my very long, back history of other games we've talked about, but Bandai's doing a lot of cool stuff, and they're kind of doing the best in the industry from a Eastern developer, from a not NA focused game. Because a lot of times what we see, right, being in North America, obviously, is that these companies have such a large focus in North America, both from personnel, from distribution channels and relationships, what have you, that the expansion that we normally see from our side is a lot easier compared to other parts of the world. Now, maybe if you're in Europe watching this, you can agree that you've often seen either Japan-focused company or a North America-focused company. You're kind of stuck in the middle where it doesn't get as much support as you would like. So again, admittedly, I have to confirm my or talk about my biases up front, where again, I've been in North America this whole time, and a lot of the other companies I followed have either been North American focused or Japan focused. So to see a Japan company ramping up as much as Bandai has in the last 2 years, again, I think we are going to see insane stuff from them in the next 5 years that, be it digital clients, be it expansion of the Bandai Card Fest push that they're doing, I think there's just a lot of cool stuff to look forward to. So that was kind of just a overview of upfront where I think, from a company standpoint, there's a lot of cool stuff happening. And some of the other games that we're going to talk about, companies obviously are doing some cool things as well. But I have to at least acknowledge upfront, just from, again, the short time that I've been following it, there's a lot of good stuff happening in the Bandai sphere. So I am excited, obviously, for Gundam. First and foremost, and to come out next year. Obviously doing a lot for Union Arena. I'm going to still plan to do stuff for Union Arena. And I guess that's a good point here at the end. I'll also add a note about kind of future plans for the channel itself, because again, the whole reason why we spend this entire year talking about all these different card games is because in February, we're hitting 10 years. So it's a long time to be covering trading card games. And also, I had fully intended to retire, kind of close down the channel at the end of February. And obviously, I've been doing a lot more, been granted a lot of amazing opportunities that, one, it just kind of reinvigorated my passion a bit. But then also, I just think the industry is in a really great landscape. So I do think there's going to be a little bit of change there, just from a, content I want to do. And you might have already seen this in the TCG industry reports, but just kind of how a different approach to the channel. But more about that later. So, and again, I apologize. You're going to realize that this video is just very off the cuff, speaking from the heart of it, because I've been sick I was literally like bed/couch ridden for 5 days straight. Like, this is the worst flu I've had in a very long time. And unfortunately, my partner, she's still out from it. And hopefully she'll recover soon. But it's been challenging to try to get this video out in time. But of course, I want to do it before it gets to the new year, because there's other stuff I have to turn around and do immediately when I'm back from Orlando. So without further ado, a little bit of a longer intro, let's talk about the games of 2024. So Again, I think this is at least all the games that I've covered. There might have been some smaller Kickstarter ones that I'm just not going to talk about here because I don't have too much to say about them, or they haven't been as much on my radar. And there is one game in here that's technically not 2024, but something I've covered and played for a bit, so I wanted to include that. But first and foremost, I'm just going to go in kind of chronological order for at least what I can remember. Dragon Ball Super Fusion World. This game, I think by now a lot of people understand that it's been a very rough start, all things considered, going back to the early announcements of the game. And this might just be a problem of, being too online and reading comments on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, what have you. But this game basically started off with very poor marketing. I will, first and foremost mention that, right? The information that went to the local game stores, it wasn't really clear that it was a new game or a relaunch of DBS Super or a DBS in general. So this is something I think that, obviously has to fall on Bandai on that regard itself. But then also a large part of this was I've just never seen more upset, and understandably right too. You view this as a competitor to your own game, but just nonstop negativity and just virtual that was just spit out every way you would look. So even if you were a new player that was happy to be getting a Dragon Ball Super game, and hey, I don't want to jump into Masters, because if you try to play Masters, it's basically Yu-Gi-Oh now, and there's a lot of people who don't play Yu-Gi-Oh now, even if they're Yu-Gi-Oh fans, because hey, it's Yu-Gi-Oh level of just nonsense that you have to remember, right? So there is something to be said about a game that is too far gone in that regard, that you just need to have a refresh. Shout out to Cardfight Vanguard, for doing as many refreshes as they have. But I think there was something that was lost kind of on the general audience as this game was launching that led to a very rough and unfortunate start. We also then had the set 2 blunder where it was just Redku as far as the eyes could see. It was arguably, and I wanted to say objectively, but it's very hard to put that data together because of how many events you covered and all that stuff per game. But I think many people will agree when you look at all the Bandai games, it is the worst set 2 from a balance and design standpoint and format health standpoint that was ever printed in a Bandai card game, which is saying a lot coming from Battle Spirits, Saga, and False Gods. But at least it didn't completely destroy the meta. Axe Spider aside is a small note, but it just did horrible things to the format, and I think that also burned a lot of kind of good faith, as it were. And of course, the digital client as well, while is exciting and fun to play, at times the structure that it's currently in from a currency and getting your cards and accessibility standpoint does leave a lot to be desired, unfortunately. But it is still a very good and fun digital sim when you can actually get engaged with it. And of course, they've been doing some special promotions and other stuff that, at least Bandai didn't kind of neglect it and forget about it. And I do see very small improvements that continue to happen. So, I hope they fix it in kind of sooner rather than later standpoint. But I do think it's something that needs another pass just from a overall card economy standpoint that could really benefit from a little bit more TLC. But the thing I do want to kind of end on a positive note here is just looking at the numbers. And I know that finals have their own challenges where it's sometimes they're invite, sometimes they're open. Some people are just always, your end of the year events are always going to have a higher player count because there's usually better rewards and stuff like that. But when I was looking back at the overall tournament data, again, as always, shout out to Eggman for putting it all in one place. I did see a lot of the regionals that were between 50 to 100 players for the various events. And then when we looked at finals, it was about 260 to 300, depending on your region. So from a finals perspective, I know there's a lot of focus on One Piece and these 1,000-player events and all that stuff. But honestly, thinking about other card games that I've covered, if you told me that my end of the year Nats was 300 some players, that's actually really good. I hate to cut it that way. And to further kind of support this, I've done a TCG industry report, which if you haven't checked that out already, but then also TCG Player came out and said that it was actually in their top 10 sales. So obviously the case pricing and, LGS is getting burnt isn't a good thing, but it does seem like it's been coming around a little bit. So overall, I'm kind of positive on Dragon Ball Super Fusion World going into the next year if they can continue trying to find some momentum. And I've heard nothing but super positive things about set 4 from a balance and design standpoint, that if 5 and 6, when events are starting to pick back up, I would not be surprised at all if Dragon Ball Fusion World does pick up again. So one that, we covered in set 1, but obviously me not being the biggest Dragon Ball fan, I haven't done much with it since, but it's still something that I keep an eye on and look forward to. Now, from there, this one doesn't technically count as a trading card game compared to everything else on this list, but I did want to at least include Sandland because it was just such a cool product drop that we got. But again, I think one that really didn't get a lot of understanding behind it, because as many times as I tried to scream out into the void that it wasn't a trading card game, it's not a trading card game, and people would still comment it's a trading card game, you know, and all that stuff. So I do want to see a world where Bandai somehow manages to communicate effectively and markets correctly and all that stuff, where they have these kind of fun one-off, you know, games or designs or what have you, where they can really just, you know, bring in a random IP. It doesn't always have to go into Union Arena, which I realize is, again, a little bit irony there. As I am covering it, and I'm obviously always very excited to see what new Union Arena sets that we get, but there's also a time and a place for some of these other games where you want to expand on their themes a little bit more and not be so confined to the rule set of Union Arena. And I think Sandland did a pretty good job of that. Obviously, this is one that I loved. I did a couple videos on it when I talked about how it was similar to Pixel Tactics, which I really loved. And it does have more of that tactical feel to it, surprise tactical card battle. But this was, again, a kind of one and done set. So it is something that, you know, if you liked Sandland, you would probably love this game. I heard nothing but positive stuff of it from people who actually bought it at the, you know, Gen Con or Bandai Card Games Fest. Wherever they bought it, right, they played it like, hey, this is actually pretty fun, right? You know, people were excited to pick it up. But again, I do think a lot of the you know, messaging around it, people thought it was a TCG and just didn't really give it a look beyond that. Now, of course, if you're not a fan of Sandland or the IP in general, then obviously it was probably just a skip to begin with, but something I think that was definitely fun and deserved a little bit more love. And again, I hope this didn't, you know, deter Bandai from doing other one-off products like this, because I do think there is a space for, you know, more board game stuff or tabletop stuff in general that we could see more of this kind of get pushed out. And you know, maybe it opens up like a separate division within Bandai, because again, Bandai is a massive organization. But again, I love the product. It was very well received from people who actually played it. And I would like to see, again, more standalone parts that can really explore some of the other IPs that they have. I mean, look, for me, it's got to be .hack. I got to make the obligatory comment here of like free .hack. Let's get .hack again. .hack. Said that enough times, but it would be really cool to see like a standalone board game. And Japanime actually does really cool adventure style of games, and they've done a lot of sword art sets. So maybe something like that could work, and Bandai can look to that to copy it. But you know, it's just something I think that needs to be explored a little bit more, and I hope that they kind of revisit in 2025. Star Wars Unlimited was the next game, and wow, this game blew up in terms of just overall big games that kind of grew into itself. And I know Lorcana was technically the end of you know, last year, but really found its stride in this year sort of thing. So it's another one of those like, yeah, it's technically last year, so I didn't want to include it. But similar to Lorcana, Star Wars Unlimited started off quite strong, and we did see a lot of support for this game in third parties, things like Star City Games or Pro PPG, stuff like that. There was a lot of other, you know, $1,000, $1,500 tournaments that people were running. I've had quite a few friends that were going to these various events, winning some good money, and just overall having fun with the game. And one that, again, I kind of didn't expect to have such strong, you know, support behind it right away, considering that we saw things like Star Wars Destiny not that long ago that got burned by, or a lot of LGSs got burned by. So this is one that's been really cool to see kind of have a glow up. And as I've covered quite a bit by now in my TCG report videos or just overall on Twitter, what have you, the game is doing very well from just a overall sales perspective, but the last couple sets have unfortunately not been so great, and it does feel like it is losing a little bit of momentum. So when I get back from Orlando, I'm going to be doing my Q4 report for the TCG industry based on TCG player data, like I've done previously. And I would not be surprised at all, again, just based on what I've been seeing, what I've been reading. I do expect Star Wars Unlimited to fall a couple places. Now, that said, every game is allowed to have a couple bad sets, so I'll be very curious to see how this trends out into Q1 and Q2. But again, something that I always wanted, you know, why I wanted to start the project to begin with, because I think Star Wars Unlimited is going to be a very interesting story for the game and how it develops overall. Now, again, Star Wars Unlimited did take kind of a slower approach to getting into stores first and foremost, focusing on their local organized play, which I fully support. I think this is definitely what more games coming out should do. But then next year is when a lot of the competitive play really picks up. And one other game that we're going to talk about later is following that same pattern. So you have to wonder how much that's really impacting these games from picking up and, getting more sales and that sort of thing. But at least from the start, Star Wars Unlimited had a lot going for it. And I really do hope that this game can turn itself around a little bit just because of how many of my friends are currently playing it and enjoying it. It is a very good game. It's something that has been a lot of fun to play. Now, one that I'm going to sneak in here really quickly is Alestrals, because technically, yes, it released much earlier, but it was in one of those things where due to, I think it was like printer error or manufacturer deals, whatever it was, there was a very long gap between set 1 and set 2, and then when it continued to roll out. So really, I think from what people would consider a TCG launch, 2024 was really the launch of Alestrals. And then also they're going to be having their first major in-person event, which again, they just had an announcement video for and all that good stuff. It's going to be a 128 player cap. But it's really exciting to see after this company has done so many online events through, their digital means as well as webcam, that they're finally going to be able to get in person and see players come together. Potentially from around the world. I know that we'll see some people flying in from like Canada and stuff like that, which isn't as much as say Europe, but I know that in the video that he mentioned, some of the staff are going to be flying in from Europe or other parts of the world. So it's going to be really cool just to see the first major event happen for this game and the amount of support that it's going to get, kind of finally appearing in one place, and finally the culmination of a year's worth of efforts, transpiring into hopefully a sold out and what I would expect to sell out event. So Alestrals also getting a special mention here because of the digital client that they're going to have rolling out, which again, I think is just increasingly important for new card games that really want to try to enter the market. I think Alestrals just continues to do everything right by their community, and overall just, again, balancing quickly, changing cards, good product design that's coming out, good supplemental sets. Like there's just so much that Alestrals is doing that I really am shocked that there's not more coverage. Again, for me personally, I never played Yu-Gi-Oh growing up, and I wasn't the biggest Pokemon fan since I stopped playing after Gen 2. So I am literally just not the demographic for the game, right? I miss on both big swings, unfortunately. But again, as someone who's been covering trading card games for 10 years, I can appreciate everything that they're doing, and I think I have to continue to mention this card game. Again, I have no monetary ties to it. I have no emotional ties to it. But as just someone who is which is weird to say now for as long as I've been doing this, but arguably industry veteran of new card games, for considering that's what this entire channel is built upon, you have to talk about Alestrals. Like there's just too much going on for it that you would be doing yourself a disservice if you're not talking about it. So again, I think there's going to be a lot of great things for Alestrals in 2025 to look forward to, but something that I can't really speak on beyond that. But again, very excited to see where it goes from here. Now, the other game, which I am going to mention in 2024, because it was my first look at it. Obviously, it came out a bit ago, and I went to a regional. I top 8 at a regional. I did, a bit. I did a couple of videos and all that stuff, but Grand Archive. And I know that people who follow me on Twitter or know how I feel about the game are probably going to expect me to just spend, 5 minutes slamming this game and talking about all the horrible things about it. It's not really the case. Obviously, no TCG is perfect, and I could go through this entire list and just kind of slam each one of them if I really wanted to. But for the sake of this video and just overall, I don't like just slamming games for no reason. I am trying to do a more balanced approach kind of going forward, even if that's not what YouTube really likes. But I don't care. I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm clearly not someone who's going to fight the algorithm and deal with all that nonsense. It's just me. I'm just Cosmic. I'm going to give you my thoughts on games and not worry about the clickbait titles and all that stuff. So Grand Archive, it has gorgeous, gorgeous artwork. I mean, definitely one of my favorites. Actually, kind of, I guess looking at the list overall, just thinking back, and again, there's no script. I'm doing this all in real time. Looking back at what I'm considering 2024, and yes, I guess it is cheating a little bit to putting Grand Archive in this list as well. Yeah, they have the best artwork out of this entire list. Like, not close. Their premium treatment is very good. The special arts they continue to do for like the supporter packs, it's just really top-notch stuff. Like, it does feel like a Japanese, what is it, like whatever their slogan is, Japanese trading card game with a Western design focus, look, it's magic numbers. We get it. 1,000 and 2,000 and 3,000 is too big for our smooth brains. Have to dumb it down to, 1 and 2 Obviously exaggerating a little bit. It is nice to have more simplistic numbers, but, that was their big marketing theme that like, hey, we're using MTG numbers, which fine, it works. But overall, again, it is something that the sets are wonderfully designed. It does get a good amount of support for each one of kind of the elements and advanced elements. But this is where I do have to kind of note a couple things now, is that the price still, and this is just maybe me getting older and maybe thinking back to why I quit Flesh and Blood as well, but there is a certain dollar amount to fun that I am having or expectations that I have in the game, right? If I have a $50 to $100 deck that I'm just going to play for like a season and then disregard and kind of throw away, not a big deal, right? I got fun of it. I went to a couple events. I had a great time. But then when you have something like the $400 to $800 range, and again, I have looked at the latest set of Grand Archive, so forgive me, some of those prices might need to be updated. But generally speaking, there is your like fringe, here's your $150 deck, but just expect that you're going to be spending around $300 with outliers on each end, or just say $300 to $400 for your like normal investment in terms of like getting your dungeon guides and things of that nature. But then, when I invest thousands of dollars into a card game, because again, if you're playing competitive, you're going to have to get multiple options, and that does add up quite quickly. I do expect a little bit more. And honestly, I was a little bit dissatisfied with the dev direction for the game when they took maybe a little bit too much of the Japanese trading card game balance influence from their game for their game as well, that it did feel really bad. And it could just be the fact that I joined at the worst possible time, and the recollection decks were a mistake from balance, whatever it might be. Either way, it's just not something that I wanted to spend too much more time in, just from a cost perspective, but it is still a very good game. Unfortunately, when I was preparing to do this, and I kind of did a quick scroll through of Twitter and other places and looking at the meta overall, it does look like now there's a new problem. So it's one of those games where they just create a new problem every set, and they say, oh, we're going to answer it by printing answers in the next set. But then by the time that rolls around, a new problem pops up where they then say, oh, and we're going to look at this into the next set again. So I at least appreciate that Grand Archive does have the flexibility to jump in and correct sets where they can, or they have ways to add in through their Proxia's Vault to make, little Band-Aid solutions. But again, for a game that does have that much higher buy-in footprint compared to, pretty much everything else on this list other than Star Wars Unlimited, which I think Star Wars Unlimited prices have come down quite a bit as well with the recent sets. So maybe even Star Wars Unlimited now has that lower footprint, right? It does lend itself to wanting to see a little bit better balance from the Grand Archive side. That can be frustrating. But again, overall, it is something that I would recommend. The organized play, even if limited, has really good time investment. Like, if all you care about is money from card games, you should be playing Grand Archive yesterday, right? Admittedly, when Battle Spirits was like the game to play in 2023 because the pricing and just we made so much off Battle Spirits, myself and obviously some of the other top players, but it's one of those things where, like, yes, there are people, and I will fully admit that it'll never be me, who are playing trading card games just for money. And look, if we are talking about 2024 or in 2025 now, your games that you play just for money, One Piece, I think is still very solid. I know there's been some disruption about, where that is right now, but I think One Piece is still very safe when you look at like World's Prizing. Flesh and Blood just for having a good circuit, even if the competitive nature is a little bit lacking. And then it's Grand Archive. Like, yes, there needs to be more events, but the conversion rate on good players is very, very high. And I think there is a opportunity to, skill gap your opponent in this game in particular, even if it does have a little bit of the, coin flip matches I didn't like. And again, that could just be a format issue. But overall, I do very strongly think it is a game worth playing, especially if you're someone who only wants to play one trading card game and does not mind the larger buy-in that's required. Check out Grand Archive. I really can't say that enough. Like, yes, I had my negative comments, but for people that actually talk to me about the game and listen through the whole, spiel of it, it is still one that I look at very fondly. I love looking at the new artwork that they provide. Even the playmats they do are just insanely top quality. Just for me, again, who's someone who covers multiple trading card games and wants to focus on casting a wider net, especially in 2025, it just doesn't fit at all for the reasons I've just listed, but it is still a very good game. Moving on from there, we have Altered TCG, which, man, this one is another one that I want to maybe not spend too much time on because I know this video is already getting longer, but it is one that I know the QR codes is, bums out a lot of people. I think overall it was just it's a very good game. It's so fun. I really love Altered because it is so different in a year or years, I guess, right? If we think about the last 3 years of gaming, we finally got something that was so different in the TCG landscape that I so desperately wanted to see this game be an absolute success. And to be fair, in Europe, they had a 1,000 player event that they kept increasing the capacity of tickets and just keeps selling out instantly. I mean, definitely the game is off to a very strong start in Europe. But then, as I mentioned earlier, this is another game where they are very much like, no, we need to get everything in place. We need to make sure that our organized play is, cooked fully. We want to support local stores first. And in that note, the promo packs that they have for LGSs, love that. So same with, I guess that's one more thing I'm going to give a shout to Grand Archive for. Grand Archive and Altered TCG have amazing LGS support. And I really want to stress that point for 2025. If you're going to have a new game that is coming out and you want to have an impression on players and owners alike, look at what these two games are doing and definitely just try to copy it. I'm going to be blunt about it. Just straight up copy it. Obviously, fix a couple of things that make it fit for your game, but I think those are just the two best examples that we have right now in the industry, and more games need to be doing that. Outside of that, again, Altered is pushing off their major competitive play until next year. It does have a digital sim, which I think is a wonderful thing for it, to get more people the accessibility into it, try out new decks if they really want to, and all that nature. But I do think, the unique problem has been going back and forth. I think a lot of people do love it because it does provide that, fun 1 out of 1 experience. But then also there has been some, power level changes that happened with Robinhood, where it kind of just ruined every unique card then. So it is a bit of a double-edged sword in that regard, but just from an overall, honestly, again, looking at this list just from a strictly 2024 lens, from a overall perspective, this is probably my favorite card game on this list actually to play, because it is just so different. There's a lot of, fun deck building avenues that you can take. It's just a good game. It really is a good game. And I've covered that previously, so you can check out my other videos if you want to. And it's just a shame that it hasn't picked up more here locally, because I have almost a complete set 1 that is, ready to play. And there's actually some really cool cards that are looking forward to in set 2. So this is one that hopefully if I get more time, I can definitely revisit. But if you have a local scene for Altered, look, again, I get it. The QR codes on the front are not the best, but if you're just looking for a palate cleanser in the TCG industry and you don't mind something that's a little bit closer to a board game, I cannot stress enough, this is absolutely a must-play game. It is just so fun and engaging, and I really love the dynamics they were able to put into this, that I really want to see how this game evolves. If nothing else, right, I'm very curious to see from a design perspective how this game evolves. And maybe this is why I love covering new TCGs as much as I do, because just seeing set 1, seeing the first year of a card game and how design changes, for me is the most fascinating thing. Usually by set 2 or set 3, you're either having to break your color pie or introducing new mechanics that aren't maybe in the same spirit of the original design of the game, but level up the gameplay because you just need something new to attach to, right? But I really love year 1 of game design and watching these. So Altered TCG is definitely one that I would strongly, recommend looking into if you have a local scene for it. And also it's very cheap. If you, uniques aside, because obviously, as I just mentioned, it has the 1 of 1 issue. It is an extremely affordable game to get into, which I think is another strength of it, for just having fun, throwing together cheap, like literally $20 decks that are competitive, right? $20 to $30 competitive decks you can take to locals, have fun with, or just keep on your shelf and treat it as a board game. Get 1 hero for each faction. You have 6 decks then you can bring out and shuffle and play. And there is enough variety in how much the gameplay changes that it does remain fresh and interesting for a lot of games that you go through. So again, one that I am very positive on for again, this list overall, and one that I really wish I had more time to play. Up next is Union Arena. And again, I was just kind of going through these in a release order, as it were. And not much needs to be said about about this one. Obviously, I'm very excited for it. For me, the biggest thing about this game is that it is literally something that you pick your favorite anime, you build a deck for like $30, you put it in your bag, and no matter what, Gen Con, or you go to a Magic regional or a Bandai regional or a Flesh and Blood regional, there will probably be someone else there that has a Union Arena deck on them, and you can just battle. It might be Bleach versus Hunter x Hunter. It might be JJK, whatever it might be, right? As the game continues to grow, it's just going to be one that's very good to kind of keep in your back pocket, because you will find others that are also carrying around Union Arena decks with them. And again, I think from a overall just gameplay standpoint, it's fun, it's fast. Obviously, the life RNG can be a little bit troublesome at parts, especially as someone who wants to try to record content and have more balanced matches at times. That can leave a little bit to be desired. But again, it's just a celebration of IPs. I love the texture cards that they do. Again, other than Grand Archive on this list in particular, Union Arena triple stars, blow everything else out of here, out of the water, right? I think it's just some of the best stuff that Bandai does in general, admittedly. And then also, obviously, the serialized autograph cards they have in Japan. I hope we get in the English version at some point. But then, obviously, those just go for infinite money. But they're all just a very nice, unique touch that not only are you getting a serialized card, it is hand-signed by the Japanese voice actor. So I really do hope that comes over. And again, at least for me, a lot of Union Arena in the future. I don't want to spend too much time in this section because it's literally one of the main games I plan to carry on through 2025, but more on that kind of at the end of it. So the last game to mention here is going to be Ultraman. And yes, admittedly, this is one that holds a bit of a honestly just... I feel so torn, right? Because of who's working on it. Shishida-san is, creator of Force of Will. Obviously, this channel would not exist without them. So I want to see this game, survive and do well. However, the Ultraman IP is just not that big in the West. So I'm very curious to see where this game goes from here. Because again, at the shell of it, it is a very easy to get into and light gameplay that doesn't have like the depth to it that I think a lot of trading card game veterans are looking for. So it would follow more of like the Lorcana route of it's just bringing in a new audience to the TCG industry. But again, I have to then question the Ultraman IP, exposure level that we have here in the West isn't really that high. So I am curious to see how this kind of evolves into 2025. Again, overall, it's light, it's fun. I think the gameplay is fine. It's not something that I would say is like the most complex or deep, again, on this list, but it doesn't have to be. It is, again, something like Union Arena, where it's just meant to be a fun game that you can play quickly with your friends or between rounds, or if you're trying to get a younger audience into the trading card game sphere, maybe you have kids, right, or something like that. So it is very easy for them to pick up these games and play. That I do think Ultraman still does have its place in that regard, but it is something that's a bit more difficult to find the right audience for in the West. And there are a couple, smaller events that are happening. It doesn't really have a good, TO support just yet from like just an overall North American lens. But it is something that I'll be very curious to see kind of how it grows from here, and what that means for the future of the Ultraman card game. Again, not too much to comment here. I did open up a box. Some of the foiling looks great. The artwork itself, I have a love-hate with. They have some really amazing like comic book style or anime artwork that looks so good on the cards. And then they have the other ones, which is clearly a nostalgic move, and it's just screen grabs from the shows or movies or what have you. That does feel a little bit misplaced, where I really want to see all unique artwork going forward. But again, it's one that I think will be interesting to see kind of where it unfolds. So that was a little bit longer because, again, there was a lot to get through. But now I want to talk about kind of just quick 2025 and what it means for the future of the channel. And look, there is a lot going on in 2025. I'm just going to put all the logos I can find up on the screen now. Look, if there's one thing you've kind of gotten from, if you follow me on Twitter, or Blue Sky, or X, or wherever else now, Facebook page, what have you, we are definitely now getting to a point where there's just a lot going on in the industry. And just looking at a couple of these, I do think there are going to be some that are just fun Kickstarter games and you kind of go on their way sort of thing. Look, I bought into Magi Nation because it's just nostalgic treat, as it were. It's really funny to see that they're getting a new set, all things considered, 20 years later, well, however long it's been. But it's, another one that's not like the best gameplay in the world by any means, but it was unique enough and it's fun that like, yeah, I want to have a couple decks on me just to have it. And then there's other ones like Gundam, obviously super excited about. And I do think as long as Bandai handles the launch well, it is going to be a market disruptor, as well as Project K, Riot's new trading card game. Like, look, I know there's a lot of conversations about look how Legends of Runeterra landed, or oh, they don't have their North American partners yet for distribution, all that stuff. But look, if Riot takes this seriously, more seriously than they did Legends of Runeterra, one, there's just way more money to be made in TCGs for anyone that knows anything compared to Legends of Runeterra versus a just print, for pennies trading card game. Riot can make infinitely more money with this game if they do it well than they ever dreamt of with Legends of Runeterra. And again, I spent a lot of time on Legends of Runeterra, so I won't go into that whole spiel of it, but there's a lot of ways that they can do it right, that they should just throw money at this, for the first year if they can, just to make sure that they get that global parity quickly, which, spoiler, they did say global parity. That I think that Project K is going to be a massive, massive industry disruptor, much in the same way that we saw Lorcana and One Piece happen in 2024. So this is kind of the other reason why I want to continue to do these reports going to 2025 is I really do think that one, it's just a very super interesting time for the industry in general, right? We are in a golden era of trading card games. Everyone has a game that they can play and really can enjoy and look forward to that is getting at least some amount of support, obviously varying degrees, depending on, webcam only all the way up to full worlds and all that stuff. But there has never been a better time to be a TCG player. That said, we have to also very much talk about the elephant in the room, and maybe people just aren't talking to their LGS owners about the current landscape, or they don't care, whatever it might be, especially if you're a Magic player. Obviously you don't care, because I was that Magic player at one point. I just thought Magic was, this can be said for any of the big three games, right? I was like, Magic is the only game. Look at all these formats I can play. Look at all these events that are constantly going on. I just never looked outside my Magic bubble. And I think that's pretty fair for the vast majority of TCG players, to be fair. However, if you stop and take the time to talk to LGS owners, especially the ones that are in the seating capacity of 20 to 60 to 70 players, if you're talking to the massive stores that have seats for 300, always have jam-packed events, those are not the people you should be talking to right now, just point blank. But if you talk to some of those small to mid-sized store owners and get their thoughts on what happened in 2024 and now looking at 2025, there's definitely a little bit of a worry just in terms of, getting to too many trading card games, and not only just too many trading card games, but bigger games that have a good following that just push out the availability for other, mid-sized games to even be considered, right? When you think about a medium-sized store that is going to be doing Magic for sure, and then Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon, sometimes all three at the same time, that's already three big games that take up a lot of the tournament space. Then we had One Piece, Lorcana, and now Star Wars. We've literally doubled the amount of big-sized games, and you can go to my TCG reports to know what I'm talking about, that in a very short amount of time, we are now having an all-time high for competitive days to play card games, right? There's only so many seats that you have at the LGS level to support these various games. And at the end of the day, not everyone wants to play trading card games on a Monday or Tuesday night. It just doesn't always work with people's schedules as nice as it does for Saturdays and Sundays. So when we look at 2025, I really do think you have to mention the big six in that regard now, because of just the amount of pressure that they put on some of these other games. Now, we are also then looking at Gundam and Project K coming out in 2025. And again, as somebody who's been watching the industry for 10 years and is also aware of what's happening at these two very specific games, some public, some not public information, what have you, these are going to be very big games in 2025 if the pieces fall in the right place. So that would mean that we are looking at potentially 8 massive players. And again, I can only speak to the North America market. That's my small disclaimer here. But 8 massive players who are all going to be fighting for that limited time at the LGS level. And that's not good, my friends, for those of us who are enjoying things like Shadowverse Evolve, Grand Archive, even Flesh and Blood, arguably just based on trends, right? It is not a good time to be a fan of some of these other games because you are going to get pushed out from the store play, or you are going to be forced to kind of reallocate to like a Wednesday night, which might not be ideal. Every time that we've tried to kind of shift around days at playing for the couple of LGSs that I've talked to, you lose players no matter what you do. And sometimes you do find out that like Wednesday night is actually the best option. It works for the most people, and that's fine, right? That's great. However, that's not always the case. So you are kind of going into a losing position looking at what this means for the industry overall. And again, then you have things like, Weiss Schwarz Rose, while technically not confirmed, I would not be surprised if Bushy Road pushes us out west based on some of their product reviews that they do for like quarterly financial reporting and their summer conferences and winter conferences, stuff like that. Godzilla and Weiss Schwarz Rose does feel like it's going to be coming west in some capacity. And these are just games that have a wall that you're going to have to climb over to kind of stick around and make an impact in 2025. So again, I think from an overall TCG standpoint, it's a really exciting time. It's awesome to see, again, thinking back 10 years from now, from Force of Will kind of being like, oh, look, a Japanese trading card game is finally entering the market and making a reasonable impact. Like, it made top 4 sales of ICV2. Like, again, if you didn't live through that time, like, the first year of Force of Will was groundbreaking for Japanese trading card games in the same exact way that One Piece is groundbreaking for trading card games. Obviously, it's a different inflection point because you have to think about how the industry has changed from, those two time points. But again, I really do want to stress, like, these are two, from a Japanese trading card game standpoint, in the last 10 years, these are like the 2 data points that like really stick out, I think, from a overall industry standpoint, that now we're getting to the point of kind of, wondering where some of these others are going to fall. And again, it's the last thing that I have to mention here before I get into the future channel part is, it's overwhelming. Even as someone who wants to give games a little bit of a spotlight and make sure that they, just from a historical perspective, I want these games to be somewhere on YouTube, because 10 years from now, someone's going to be like, oh, I want to, Ultraman had a card game? Who did a video on it, right? Like, there's some of these games that just fly so far under the radar that nobody does content on them, and it crushes my heart. So that's why I still want to try to, if there's a new trading card game that comes out, I still, with all my hope and dreams, even if it destroys my algorithm, like, this year has been the worst for my YouTube algorithm, all things considered. And look, I went into this year knowing that, but if I could still do like the unboxing, review, and gameplay kind of trio of videos for games that come out, and I can do that, I would love nothing more to continue like a TCG archive going into 2025. But it does continue to be harder and harder to do gameplay videos with a lot of people who might not have, again, Ultraman being a key point here. They don't have Ultraman cards, so I don't have somebody I can do gameplay videos with, unless I go message like Kodak or something, right? But that's not realistic, so I am a little bit limited in what I could do. But I think with the way the industry is going, I really do hope this is something that I can continue doing in 2025, because there is just a lot going on, admittedly. And with that, I guess kind of just talking about future channel plans, right? So this is something that obviously with Union Arena is going to remain a focus for the channel. It's just been, out of the 10 years I've been doing trading card games, it's just been so nice to see the sheer amount of comments that I get on Union Arena videos for people who are like, oh, I'm finally stepping out of the Magic Circle and checking out a new game. Thank you for the UA content. Or, hey, I'm a huge JJK fan. I've never played trading card games, and I'm finally getting into it, right? Like, those are the 2 comments that I like live on, that I want to always see in the comment section. I think Union Arena, for me personally, is just the best fit game for that. It is filling a niche of supporting the community, that, like, the overall TCG industry community that I want to keep doing. So obviously there are some financial limitations that I'm very quickly starting to realize that I might have to change how I'm supporting it in 2025. But I'm going to continue to do the most that I can, because I do think it's definitely something worth supporting. Other games in general, I talked about it a lot, or maybe on for social media. But I love Psy Games and just basically everything they do. Obviously, I do a lot of stuff with Grand Blue, but then also I did a lot of Shadowverse, and obviously I'm very excited for Shadowverse Worlds Beyond. So I do expect that I will be covering that game a lot when it launches, whenever it launches, hopefully sometime in Q1 or Q2. So definitely look forward to that as well. And then just from like an overall standpoint, I really do want to continue my more TCG industry reports that really reflect on kind of this crazy time that we're going through in the TCG industry and watching the sales numbers changes and all that stuff that no one else is really doing it yet. So I want to do it for that reason because so often we just see people that are like, oh, this is the best selling game, or oh, this is the worst selling game. And I'd rather have like real data that I can talk to, even if it's a smaller piece of the overall data pool, right? But like there's something there that I want to hold on to and make sure that gets covered that can then be shared across various TCG communities. So there's just a greater understanding of what's available. And then obviously Gundam and Project K, I'm very excited for both of these games, but will they appear on the channel? I think that's kind of a up in the air sort of debate right now. So Gundam, I really want to do a lot more stuff with Aspira and, maybe bring back the podcast, which people really liked from the Battle Spirits days. So if anything, I want to be on his channel a lot more for that from like a gameplay and podcast perspective that I probably just won't have time to cover it on this channel outside of like, I'll do top 8 reports, obviously. But that might be it. And then Project K, this is one that man, I did so much for Legends of Runeterra, and I really can't stress enough that Legends of Runeterra was my first like look into the League IP proper, and I just loved it. The community was great, or at least the community that I interacted with was great. The Riot devs that I got to connect with were just some of the most passionate and just heartfelt people that I've met in the industry, period, that I can't help but want to do a lot for Project K when it launches, but I'm just not sure of, what product availability is going to look like, as well as just, if you know a little bit about the game, it requires you to have pieces in the middle between you and the other player, like Altered does. And I don't know how to do that for webcam, because if you follow my content, 99% of my games are always webcam, just for a wide variety of reasons. So I might have to get a little creative with that, but if I can find a way to do it, I definitely want to support Project K because I do think that, one, the game does look good. Now that we understand how to play, the rules are up, all that stuff. Mechanically, it is a very good game. It's very solid, and it does, going back to my Altered comment, it scratches a very different itch in the TCG landscape that I want to see it do well, and I immediately want to play it for that reason. It's not a shield-based game. It's not just a straightforward, attack your opponent's life-based game. It's finally something different and unique in the industry, which I really wanted to see come to life, and I think something that we were like really missing out on. So I do think Project K from that regard is going to be really exciting. So definitely looking forward to more on that point. So again, a longer video. I just wanted to, speak from the heart on a lot of this and just kind of a 2024 in general. Obviously, with just being as sick as I was for as long as I was, really wanted to put more into this video. But now with just like my work schedule and also leaving for Orlando, I literally didn't have any other time to do this video. And when I get back, I immediately have to spend 2 or 3 days of research for the industry report video. So there's literally just no other time. So for that side of it, I do apologize. I couldn't put a little bit more love into this, and I probably could have made this a lot longer of a video, all things considered. Me looking at the time, it's already long enough to talk about more in detail of each of these games. But I thought it was really fun just to do a 2024 look back, because I do plan to do a 2025 look back, a year from now, just to see how the industry has shifted. Were some of my predictions right at that regard? And it's just kind of a fun thing to do for the sake of the channel overall. So first, I should have said it up front, but if nothing else, thank you. I'll do another proper video in February when the channel does hit 10 years. But I've just been doing this for, out of a love of my heart, because I am a salary guy at the end of the day. There's obviously no possible world where I get to do this full time, but I am obviously someone who's very passionate about TCGs and the TCG industry overall. that I at least want to talk about it from, my specific lens, and hopefully give some insight into, people who are maybe just not as in tune with it, and share what I can where it makes the most sense. So thank you for supporting the channel. This has been obviously with Union Arena a very big year just from a milestone perspective, but then also just, the support for more of the unique games that we covered. But I do commit YouTube algorithm, nightmare and just destroy it every time I upload some of these other games. But it's something that I want to continue to do in 2025 because, again, I do think these games do deserve some kind of shout out or recognition. So with that, my friends, happy New Year's or, happy 2025, depending on when you're watching this. It's probably already the new year. I wish you nothing but the best of luck, best health, and all that good stuff. And if nothing else, thank you for the subs. Enjoy card games in 2025. And look, I know there's going to be a lot of various card games out there, and I know tribalism can definitely get the best of us at times, but definitely try to keep an open mind and an open heart when someone talks about a new trading card game, because you might just find your new favorite trading card game that you never would have expected, because there's just so much happening until in 2025. So until the next video, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and see you the next time. Cheers.